Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
The stench of burnt metal and the distant sounds of gunfire filled the air as Joseph crouched in the remnants of what was once a bustling urban center. Buildings, now reduced to skeletal structures, loomed over him like specters of a forgotten civilization. His heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm that echoed the chaos surrounding him. He was a soldier, trained for war, but every battle had chipped away at his resolve, leaving him weary and scarred. Joseph had fought for Earth since the invasion began, defending against a relentless alien force that sought to claim the planet as their own. The invaders, with their sleek ships and advanced technology, seemed unstoppable. Humanity had united in their fight, but unity came at a cost. Friends had fallen, and each loss weighed heavily on Joseph's conscience. On this day, he was part of a reconnaissance team searching for intel on enemy locations. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the debris-strewn street. As Joseph maneuvered through the rubble, his instincts kicked in. He spotted a flash, a glint of metal reflecting the light, followed by the sharp crack of a sniper rifle. In an instant, he hit the ground, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Contact!" he yelled to his squad mates, but his voice was lost in the confusion. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a figure in the distance, slumped against a crumbling wall. It was an alien girl, her skin marked with streaks of dirt and blood. Panic surged within him as he realized she was exposed and vulnerable, caught between the crossfire. Without a second thought, Joseph sprang to his feet. "Cover me!" he shouted to the remaining members of his team, darting toward her. Bullets whizzed past him, the world narrowing to a singular focus, saving her. As he reached her, he instinctively used his body to shield her from the barrage of gunfire. The fear in her eyes pierced his heart, and for a moment, time stood still. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice firm, though he could feel the weight of fear creeping into his own heart. "Why are you helping me?" she gasped, her voice shaky, a blend of confusion and disbelief. Her eyes, a vivid shade of emerald, locked onto his, and in them, he saw a reflection of his own desperation. "Because we're not all monsters," Joseph replied, glancing over his shoulder as another shot rang out. He reached for her arm, and she flinched at his touch. "I'm Avani," she breathed, uncertainty mingling with hope. The name felt fragile, a connection that spanned the vast chasm between their races. "Joseph," he said, feeling a strange warmth spread through him despite the chaos surrounding them. He could feel her pulse racing beneath his fingers as he helped her to her feet. "We need to get out of here." As they sprinted together through the debris-laden street, dodging shadows and bullets, Joseph felt an unfamiliar stirring within him, a sense of purpose that transcended the war. Perhaps saving Avani wasn't just an act of valor. It was something deeper, something stirring his very soul. They ducked into a narrow alley, breathless and alive. As the din of gunfire faded into the distance, Joseph caught his breath and stole a glance at Avani. She was trembling, her eyes wide and searching, and he felt an inexplicable connection to her. In that moment, he didn't see an enemy, an alien. He saw a survivor, just like himself. "We need to find shelter," he said, urgency in his voice. "Can you walk?" "Yes." Avani nodded, determination blooming in her expression. Together, they made their way to the remnants of an old structure, a safe house, now a hollow shell, but potentially their salvation. As they entered the darkness within, Joseph glanced back at the streets they had just traversed, knowing that the battle was far from over. But in the dim light, surrounded by the ghosts of war, he felt a flicker of hope igniting, one that began with an alien girl whose life he had saved. The dark interior of the crumbling structure enveloped Joseph and Avani like a protective shroud. Dust danced in the narrow beams of light seeping through shattered windows, creating a surreal atmosphere that was starkly quiet compared to the chaos outside. A chill ran through Joseph as the adrenaline began to fade, reminding him of the weight of reality. They were not safe yet. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern etching lines across his brow as he scanned Avani for any visible wounds. She shook her head, but he wasn't convinced. The fear in her radiant eyes spoke volumes. "I've been shot before," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not the pain I fear. It's the reason behind it." Joseph felt a pang of understanding. They were both marked by trauma, bound by their experiences of loss and fear. "We'll figure this out," he reassured her, his voice firm. "You'll be safe here. I promise." As the reality of their situation sank in, Joseph rummaged through the scattered debris, finding an old military medkit tucked beneath a fallen beam. "Let's see what we can do about those cuts," he said, returning to Avani. When he reached her, their eyes met. The urgency of their situation hung in the air, electric with unspoken tension. Carefully, he began to clean her wounds with antiseptic wipes, his hands steady but his heart racing. Avani flinched at the sting but remained silent, her gaze fixed on Joseph as he worked. The intimacy of the moment was profound, and Joseph could feel an invisible thread weaving between them. "Why did you come for me?" Avani asked, her voice stronger now, tinged with curiosity. "You risked everything for a stranger." "Because I couldn't just leave you there. You weren't just some enemy to me. You were in trouble," he replied softly. "I've seen so much destruction, and I've lost too many people. I couldn't let another life slip away without trying to save it." Avani's expression shifted as she absorbed his words. "You're different," she remarked, a hint of awe in her voice. "Most humans would have let me die. They see me as a monster." "Maybe monsters are just beings we don't understand," Joseph replied, reflecting on the senseless hatred that often fueled the war. "We're all fighting for survival, but it doesn't have to mean killing each other." The silence that followed was heavy with contemplation. Avani looked down at the ground, a mixed expression of gratitude and introspection on her face. "You saved me. No one has ever done that before." Joseph paused, realizing the weight of her words. In a world filled with conflict, they had forged an unexpected bond. "That's what we're supposed to do," he said, hoping to convey the essence of humanity he feared was fading compassion. As they continued to tend to her wounds, Avani's fingers brushed against Joseph's. The electricity between them was palpable, stirring emotions that neither had expected to find in a war-torn world. They were two souls caught in a storm, seeking refuge in each other. "Tell me about your people," she urged, breaking the silence and leaning closer, curiosity shining in her eyes. "What do you fight for?" Joseph hesitated for a moment, surprised by the vulnerability in her question. He had always been trained to focus on the battle ahead, but now, facing her, he saw the importance of sharing. "I fight for my family, my friends, for a future where we can live in peace without fear." "And for me, what would you fight for?" Avani pressed, her gaze unwavering. "For you, I'd fight to the end of the universe," he said without hesitation, the words flowing out of him with a sincerity that surprised even himself. In that moment, he realized that Avani represented more than just an alien warrior. She was a beacon of hope, a possibility for something beyond the conflict. They shared a lingering glance, a silent acknowledgement of the bridge they were building. The world outside was still fraught with danger, yet within this shell of safety, two beings from different worlds found solace in each other's presence. "We need to stay alert," Joseph reminded, breaking the spell. "We can't stay here too long. We'll have to move when it's safe." "I understand," Avani replied softly, but there was determination in her voice. "Together, then." Together. The word hung between them, a promise that transcended the horrors of war. As shadows began to creep into the corners of the crumbling structure, Joseph settled down beside her, gratitude growing for this unlikely alliance. They exchanged stories of their homes, their memories blending in a tapestry woven from the threads of their experiences. Yet outside, the war raged on, pulses of violence reminding them that safety was fleeting. But in that moment of shared vulnerability, Joseph knew they had found something stronger than fear, a connection that was destined to defy the boundaries of their worlds. Hours crept by in the hidden shelter, each minute stretching as Joseph and Avani shared their worlds with one another. Outside, the echoes of distant gunfire felt like a heartbeat, reminding them of the chaos beyond the fragile safety of their refuge. Inside, however, the atmosphere was charged with the electricity of budding friendship. As darkness enveloped them, Joseph fished out a small ration bar from his pack and split it in half, handing one piece to Avani. She accepted the food cautiously, analyzing it with curiosity before taking a tentative bite. A look of surprise crossed her face. She hadn't expected it to taste this way. "What do you think?" Joseph asked, watching her reaction. "It's different," Avani said, tilting her head. "It's sweet but lacks texture." "What do you call it?" "Rations," he chuckled, feeling the heaviness in the air ease, just a fraction. "Not exactly gourmet, but it can keep you alive." Avani took another bite, chewing slowly as she contemplated the flavors. "We have our own sustenance, but I've never tasted anything like this. It's interesting to learn about how you survive," she said, her voice lighter. "Survival's all we've focused on lately," Joseph replied, his tone turning serious. "But I think it's more than just food. It's about connection. We've both lost a lot, but we need to learn from it." Avani nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I once believed that survival came from strength and dominance. We were taught that feelings only weaken us. But now I see things differently." Before Joseph could respond, a loud crash echoed outside, jolting them both from their moment of connection. Joseph instinctively reached for his weapon, gripping it tightly as he leaned closer to Avani, their breaths mingling in the tension that gripped the air. "Wait," Avani said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let me listen." She tilted her head, closing her eyes. In that moment, Joseph understood that her alien heritage afforded her abilities he could barely comprehend. The stillness stretched as she attuned herself to the sounds outside. "There are footsteps," she whispered, "but they're moving away from us." Relieved, Joseph relaxed his grip on the weapon. "Good. We should stay vigilant, though. We don't know how many of them are out there." As the tension began to ease, Joseph found himself studying Avani in the dim light. Her skin glowed softly, an ethereal hue that seemed almost otherworldly. He admired the intricate patterns that adorned her arms, markings that told stories of her culture and history, symbols of identity that he now craved to understand. A newfound courage welled up within him. "Tell me more about your people," Joseph urged, leaning in closer. "What's your world like?" Avani took a deep breath, her demeanor shifting from uncertainty to pride. "My home is named Althera. We are a people deeply connected to nature. Our cities blend harmoniously with the environment, and we cherish the balance of all living things." Joseph listened intently as she spoke, captivated by the vivid imagery she painted with her words. "But then the war came. We have to fight to survive, but not all of us see the conflict as the only way," she continued, her voice tinged with sadness. "I have witnessed unfathomable loss, just as you have." Joseph reached out and placed a gentle hand on her arm. "We're not so different then. We're all fighting for something, our homes, our loved ones. And we can't allow hatred to cloud our vision any longer," Avani interjected. "If we keep seeing each other as enemies, we'll perpetuate our own destruction." Joseph finished for her, the resonance of her words hitting close to home. "Maybe there's a way we can change that." The moment hung delicately between them, and Joseph could sense the intensity of their connection deepening. "We have to trust each other if we're going to survive this," he said, locking eyes with her. "Will you trust me?" Avani's gaze seemed to pierce through the veil of conflict, reaching into the very core of themselves. "I will," she whispered, her voice filled with conviction. The sincerity in her eyes disarmed him, and he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. He had to protect her at all costs. As the night wore on, they took turns keeping watch, sharing quiet stories of their pasts and dreams for the future whenever the surrounding silence felt too heavy. Avani spoke of her people's customs and festivals, vibrant and full of life. In return, Joseph shared tales of humanity's resilience, moments of laughter and joy amidst the darkness. In the flickering shadows, Joseph began to discover more than the soldier within him. He felt himself opening up to the possibility of something greater. Avani was a puzzle he wanted to solve, a history he craved to learn, and amid the turmoil, she was a beacon of hope. In the early hours of dawn, the world outside began to stir, signaling the impending danger that still loomed over their fragile connection. But for Joseph, as he watched the first light break over the horizon, he realized that in a world defined by war, he had found something worth fighting for, a union that could bridge the gap between their races, igniting a flicker of possibility in the chaos. "Together, we can change this," he whispered softly, determined to shape a future where alliances were forged, not broken. The dawn brought with it a quiet stillness, but Joseph's heart raced with unease. He and Avani had been in hiding for too long, and the reality of their situation loomed large. Outside, the world was awakening, and with it came the dangers of war once more. As the sun's first light pushed through the grime-covered windows, Joseph glanced over at Avani, who was resting against a crumbling wall, her delicate features softened by the golden glow. For a brief moment, the refugees' haven felt like a sanctuary, a temporary escape from the battles that continued to rage beyond their shelter. He leaned closer to her, uncertain of how to wake her gently. "Avani," he whispered, brushing a soft strand of hair from her face, careful not to disturb her peaceful slumber. Her eyelids fluttered open, and for a moment, her confusion transformed into surprise. "Joseph," she murmured, blinking rapidly as consciousness returned to her. "We need to get moving," he said, urgency creeping back into his voice. "We don't know if the area is safe." Avani nodded, her expression shifting from drowsiness to determination in the blink of an eye. She quickly collected herself, adjusting her attire, a series of vibrant layers that reflected the hues of her home. They prepared to leave their sanctuary, though Joseph could still sense the heaviness in the air, an uneasiness that had settled deep in his gut. With weapons at the ready, they cautiously stepped outside into the fresh morning air. The street lay quiet, but a palpable tension hung in the atmosphere. With a quick glance back at the ruined structure they had called shelter for the night, Joseph sensed that they were not alone. Suddenly, the distant sound of engines roared to life, and Joseph's instincts screamed for him to act. "We need to find cover," he urged, pulling Avani into a nearby alleyway just as figures started to emerge from an armored vehicle. "They're here," he hissed, observing the soldiers clad in dark gear, the insignia of their ranks overtly visible even in the early morning light. "We need to stay low and wait for the right moment." Avani pressed herself against the cool stone of the alley wall, her breathing steady and controlled as she listened for threats. Joseph marveled at her focus. She possessed a poise that belied the situation, a testament to her warrior spirit. "What are they saying?" Joseph asked quietly, aware that her heightened senses were far more attuned to the situation than his own. "They're searching the area for survivors," she whispered back. "They suspect we're nearby." Just as Joseph was mentally mapping their escape route, the sound of gunfire erupted, a noise so sharp it cut through the strained air. His heart raced, and instinctively, he pulled Avani closer, shielding her with his body. "Stay here," he commanded, but Avani was already reacting. Her eyes sparked with determination as they heard commotion from the soldiers. "They won't stop until they find us," Avani said, her voice laced with urgency. "We have to fight back." "No," Joseph hissed, glancing at her incredulously. "We need to survive, not engage. Not yet." Yet, before they could plot their next move, a soldier, the closest one, began heading down the alley, his gaze scanning for any signs of movement. Joseph's pulse quickened as fear settled in. They had to act and fast. "Avani now," he urged, urging her to take the lead. "We go towards the back of the alley and find a way to the main road." In that moment, Joseph's strategy was cause for conflict, highlighting their growing bond. He could feel Avani's fierce spirit intertwining with his own resolve. As they maneuvered their way along the side of the building, Joseph could see that her resolve was almost palpable, and he didn't want to stifle it. They darted between shadows, skillfully maneuvering through debris, their senses heightened. There was an unspoken unity between them, an understanding that while their worlds were teetering on the brink of annihilation, together, they would fight for survival. But just as they reached the mouth of the alley, a scream erupted behind them. The soldier had spotted another escapee. The chaos exploded around them, the noise of battle roaring back to life. "Run!" Joseph shouted, grabbing Avani's hand and pulling her toward the street. They hit the main road, the sun glaring down upon them, casting shadows that danced like specters, distorting their path ahead. Yet the sounds of footsteps echoed fiercely behind them, and they were all too aware of the urgency that hung over their escape. Joseph caught a glimpse of a group forming behind him. They were determined, relentless, and fueled by the necessity of the hunt. "This way," he shouted, guiding Avani into a side street lined with a dilapidated row of buildings. As they sprinted, Joseph could feel the bond between him and Avani solidifying. It was as if every step they took together fortified their alliance against the chaos surrounding them. Side by side, they tiptoed along the edge of annihilation, trusting one another in a way that was rare amidst the clouds of conflict. "We can make it," Avani yelled, glancing back at Joseph with intensity swirling within her emerald eyes. "We will," he shouted back, pushing forward with renewed determination. "Trust me." With adrenaline surging through their veins, they pressed onward, navigating the broken streets, feeling the shadows of violence close in on them. But deep within, there was an awareness that the fight didn't just lie outside. They were both in this together, and this bond might be the key to survival. The sound of gunfire drew closer, but as they turned another corner, it tailored into the thrill of determination, the conviction that as long as they faced the horror together, they could rise above the chaos consuming their worlds. Joseph and Avani raced down the winding streets, the sound of pursuit still echoing behind them. Each step was a beat closer to freedom, yet the specter of danger loomed ever present. They dodged into another alley, emerging into a courtyard littered with remnants of a forgotten era, a blend of twisted metal and broken concrete. "They'll catch us if we don't find cover," Joseph panted, scanning their surroundings. The courtyard was half in ruins, but there was a wall that still stood, a place they could conceal themselves. "Over there." Avani pointed towards the wall, nudging Joseph gently as they rushed towards it. Together, they pressed their backs against the cold surface, hearts pounding, breaths quickening, the remnants of fear mixing with a spark of adrenaline. Joseph risked a glance around the corner, peering into the street they had just traversed. The soldiers were still combing the area, methodically tracking their steps, determination etched into their expressions. "We can't wait long. We have to make a move, find a way out of the city," he muttered, his voice low. "What if we used my abilities?" Avani whispered, her eyes narrowing with focus. "I can create a distraction. It will give us time." The very notion sent a chill down Joseph's spine. "It's too dangerous. They're armed and trained. They won't hesitate." Avani brushed her fingers against his arm, a calming touch that steadied the tremor of uncertainty within him. "You trust me, right? We'll do this together. We need to buy ourselves enough time to find safety." He considered her for a moment, the intensity of her gaze mingling with their shared resolve. "All right," he finally conceded, realizing he couldn't deny the bond they had forged. As the footsteps grew closer, Avani positioned herself beside him, her determination unwavering. "When I create the distraction, you need to take the opportunity to move. I'll follow." Joseph nodded, his heart racing with a mix of worry and admiration. "Be careful." With a steadying breath, Avani closed her eyes, focusing her energy, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to still around them. The air grew heavier with anticipation, electric with her intention. "Now," she called, unleashing her energy into the air. A dazzling burst of light erupted from her fingertips, illuminating the courtyard like a flare. The enemy soldiers turned instantly, distracted by the radiant display. "Go!" Joseph shouted, instinctually pushing into motion, barely waiting for her to follow. They sprinted through the courtyard, the luminous distraction illuminating their path as they veered out into another narrow street. Joseph felt the weight of adrenaline coursing through his veins as they dashed past buildings and debris, the world blurring around them. He glanced back, spotting the soldiers currently mesmerized, struggling to comprehend the sudden burst of energy. "Keep running," he urged Avani, who remained steadfast by his side, unyielding in her strength. They ducked into a side passage, the chaotic sounds of the battlefield fading as they ventured deeper into the heart of the city. But just as hope began to well within him, a sharp pain erupted in Joseph's side, the sting of a projectile embedding into the wall beside them. grazing his arm. "Joseph!" Avani cried, horror flashing across her features as they fell behind an old crate, seeking shelter. "I'm okay," he assured her, gritting his teeth. "We just need to." Suddenly, gunfire erupted around them, rattling against the walls and sending dust swirling into the air. Joseph understood. This was the moment they would define themselves, not just as soldiers, but as allies, as something more. "I can't let you get hurt," Avani shouted, determination radiating from her. "Together," he urged. "We fight together." Drawing upon the strength they had forged in their bond, Avani unleashed another concentrated burst of energy. It erupted outward, dazzling and disorienting the soldiers. With the enemy blinded momentarily, Joseph bolted from behind the crate, adrenaline propelling him forward as he moved with fierce resolve. They struck together, the harmony of their powers resonating through their movements. Avani used her agility and speed, her alien heritage granting her the ability to dart between enemy fire with eloquent grace, while Joseph relied on his training and strength, taking down adversaries that encroached upon them. "Keep moving, we can't stop," Joseph yelled, their synchronized movements creating a formidable force against the pursuing soldiers. They fought with purpose, fueled by the desire to protect one another, to survive. As the battle raged on, they began to harmonize like a dance, their actions seamless, trust blooming in the ferocity of their bond. "This way," Avani shouted, leading him toward an old transport vehicle, abandoned, yet intact. Every instinct told him they would need a means to escape. The city was closing in around them. They leaped inside, racing against time. Joseph quickly assessed the controls, finding the ignition still active. "We can't let our guard down yet, but I think I can get it started." Just then, soldiers approached their location, determined to finish what they started. He could hear their footsteps dangerously close, the tension palpable as he fiddled with the ignition, heart pounding as if it would jump from his chest. Come on," he muttered fervently, adrenaline surging as he worked. Finally, the engine roared to life, the low hum filling the air. "Go," Avani urged, steadfast and unyielding as she held her weapon steady, ready to protect their escape. With one final, determined look, Joseph pressed on the gas, putting the vehicle into gear. They barreled forward, dust kicking up behind them as they tore through the remnants of the battlefield, breaking free from their pursuers, their bond steadying the resolve within. As they tore out of the city limits, a cacophony of sounds faded behind them. They both knew it wasn't over, the war still ravaging their worlds, but they had forged a path to something unforeseen, a partnership that transcended the boundaries of their identities. "You did it," Avani exclaimed, a radiant smile breaking across her face, and in that moment, the culmination of their experiences in the face of adversity solidified something unspoken between them. Joseph felt a rush of warmth in his chest, heart pounding not just from the thrill of escape, but from the undeniable truth he had discovered. He had found someone worth fighting for, someone who could change everything. "Together," he echoed, his voice low but filled with resolve, yet beyond the battlefield chaos. They both knew this was just the beginning of a journey that could unite their worlds. As they escaped the chaos of the city, the landscape began to change, leaving the remnants of war behind. The terrain shifted into rolling hills, dotted with patches of wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. It was as if nature itself was a sanctuary, a contrast to the turmoil they had just endured. Joseph felt the tension in his shoulders ease. He glanced over at Avani, who sat beside him, her expression a blend of determination and awe as they moved farther away from danger. "Did we really just do that?" she asked, incredulity dancing in her eyes. "I guess we did," he replied, a grin breaking across his face. The thrill of their escape bubbled within him as everything shifted to a new reality. "I'd say we make a pretty good team." Avani's smile widened, warmth radiating from her. "It's more than a team, Joseph. We bonded over the fight, but what we've started goes beyond the battlefield." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in. The bond they had forged in adversity had blossomed into something raw and real, an unexpected connection between two souls from vastly different worlds. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting hues of orange and purple across the sky. They pulled over, opting to take a moment's respite. They hopped out of the transport, stretching their limbs and soaking in the beauty of the moment, an oasis amidst their chaotic lives. Joseph leaned against the vehicle, watching Avani as she looked out into the distance. "What will we do now?" he asked, curiosity lacing his voice. "I think we should find others like us," she replied, her gaze locked on the horizon. "People who believe peace can be found, despite the suffering. We can forge connections." Joseph felt a profound sense of purpose in Avani's words. Together, we could unite both our worlds. Show them that we can coexist instead of fighting. "Exactly," she exclaimed, turning to face him, her eyes shimmering with hope. "If we work together, we can change perspectives, show them that there's more to us than war." The enormity of their mission settled upon them, but instead of fear, it ignited a fire within. "I'm in," Joseph declared, stepping closer. "As long as we do this together, there's nothing we can't face." Avani smiled brightly at him, the light of hope shining through her. Then it settled. As night began to fall, they set up a small camp near the transport, building a fire to keep the growing chill at bay. In the flickering glow of the flames, they sat across from each other, sharing stories, laughter, and dreams of the future. They spoke of family, of experiences from their homelands. Joseph reminisced about home-cooked meals that felt like comfort. Avani described the vibrant festivals that celebrated unity in her world. Each tale drew them closer, weaving a tapestry of connection that bound their hearts together. Eventually, the conversation shifted to unspoken feelings, the intensity hanging between them like a charged current. Joseph felt a stirring in his chest, realizing how Avani had transformed him. She had opened his heart in ways he had never anticipated. "Joseph," she said softly, her tone shifting into something deeper, "I never thought I could find companionship in an enemy, but you've shown me how strong bonds can form in the most unexpected conditions." "I feel the same way," he admitted, his voice earnest. "You've changed my perception of everything. You're not just an ally. You're someone I want to protect and be with for the long haul." Avani smiled, a gentle glow illuminating her features. "There's so much we can build, not just for ourselves, but for our people. We can be the bridge they need." Their eyes locked, the world around them fading as they momentarily lost themselves in each other's gaze. The flames flickered as silence filled the space, and both felt an indescribable connection, cementing their relationship. With a shared breath, Joseph took a step forward and embraced Avani, feeling the warmth of her body against his. It was not merely a moment of comfort. It was the beginning of something profound. She returned his embrace, the tension of the world dissolving in their shared fortress of trust. "Whatever comes next, we face it together," he whispered, pulling back to look into her eyes, filled with determination and sincerity. "For our nations and for us." "Yes," she agreed softly, her voice steady as her gaze met his. Together, with the weight of their promise hanging in the air, they settled into a comfortable quiet, the fire crackling as stars began to twinkle above. They did not know what lay ahead, struggles, triumphs, and uncertainty, but they understood one thing. Their path had intertwined, and in unity, they would carve a future, one that held the promise of peace. As night blanketed the world, Joseph and Avani remained close, whispering their hopes into the starlit sky, forging a bond that transcended war, a bond rooted in trust, courage, and above all, love.